Hello, class. Thought I'd do something a little bit different this week and do a little video sort of announcement. We are at week 5 now, so we're halfway through the term. What we're going to be doing now is we're going to be transitioning away from the old static sort of traditional media of newspapers, magazines, print media, and television, radio, and audio and video media to what we call new media. Um, Now, just be aware that new media might not be so new anymore, but it does provide that other thing that the old media, the traditional media, didn't have, and that was sort of that interactivity um, aspect to it. So we're going to be looking at things such as obviously the internet. That is at the heart of new media. Because it does provide that interactivity to that. So we'll look at the history of the internet, how it developed from basically a Cold War system for spreading information and data out across several different locations or multiple locations, so that everything wasn't housed in one area, to its development as an sort of an educational tool, and now obviously where we are now with the development of consumer technologies and communication. It is a full-blown medium now that consumers use. We go from the web 1.0, or the web when it was first introduced. Well, first we start looking at some of those first digital technologies, such as the early dial-up AOL and those things that first started out with that. Now to the web 1.0, where you basically could just access information that was located on a server somewhere. Somebody housed a web page and you went to it. Then you went to sort of the interactive nature of basically being able to communicate back and forth with people and organizations. And then to the Web 3.0, which will be sort of that next iteration where you'll have almost the idea that the things that you're accessing can kind of anticipate what you're needing and deliver those. I was listening to a segment on CNN just this morning with the president of or CEO of General Electric, Jeff Immelt, and he basically had a good idea of where that kind of that web is going. That first really web area was sort of that consumer web, where not AOL, Amazon and stuff like that, they provided consumer services and really grew that sort of consumer area. Then you had the enterprise web, where you're basically companies such as Google and Amazon, uh, to their sort of their web-based services, database services, and to some extent Microsoft, well, to a big extent Microsoft, are providing those sort of cloud services to other companies. And he says the next iteration of the web will be, the really growth area will be the industrial web, where industrial companies are going to start getting into this. They gave the idea that what do you call elevator company. Yeah, they come in, they fix stuff like that, but being able to access information about that, the manufacturing systems, their installations, and being able to access the information so they can prevent something from happening in an elevator. So there is great movement towards what this medium will be able to achieve. The other big thing that we'll talk about, and it again had obviously its development before really the web, and that's video games. You go to the standalone video game systems, the Ataris and the Nintendo machines and stuff like that. They were the big bulky machines. You stuck a cassette down into them. You played the game that developed into or transitioned into maybe discs. And then you had the handheld systems, the Game Boys and stuff like that. And then little by little they started to integrate into the web as the web started to develop. And now you have multiplayer games where you can play against people and not just the machine. Obviously, the thing that really had to develop there was it wasn't the day of the dial-up internet service where you were paying by the minute. You really had to develop into the broadband access, and that's really what's driven the internet over the last, oh, I don't know, 2 decades or so, is the growth of affordable internet access. I can remember when I was writing my dissertation back in the 90s. That was still something that a lot of people didn't have. They were basically accessing the internet either at work or at other public places like the library and stuff. There wasn't affordable access in the internet. So over the last 20 years, that really has grown quite a bit. So that's what we're looking at this week, is sort of that transition from the old, what the book calls legacy media or traditional media, to sort of the new media. But also remember that new media, or all media, is new media at some point. Back in the 50s, television was new media. Back in the 1920s, television or radio was new media. So you get these kinds of things. And so it's kind of hard to think that is the internet really new media, because we've had it for 20 years. And just because a medium is considered legacy medium doesn't mean it still can't develop. Television will not stand still. Radio won't stand still. Newspapers, magazines won't stand still. You have to think, what defines a newspaper? Is it because it's news and on paper? Or is that just a term that describes what a company does? Does it have to be on paper to be a newspaper? Same thing with magazines. Does a magazine have to be printed on paper? So these things will continue to develop in the age of the internet. So that's where we're going today. The other thing you got to remember, we've taken about 2 weeks off with the discussion boards. So remember, we're going to get back into that this week, talking about new media. You'll look at a new medium, a new type of medium, whether that's social media, whether that's I don't know, all sorts of different things on the internet, or new medium. I mean, it could be video games, it could be all this kind of stuff. And you'll discuss what that impact is on society. And then also your first iteration of your paper is due this week. Where'd I write that down? And that sort of the part one submission of your paper, where you're going to be looking at, you're going to create an outline of your paper and how you're going to organize it and present the information that you've been gathering. So this week is basically just an outline. And look at those kinds of things. So remember to get into that submission. Remember to look at the grading rubric, and don't forget your discussion this week. We haven't been doing them for the last couple of weeks. So that's what this week is. So let's keep up the good work and work through the week, and one more half to go.